My name's Lauren, and I never thought I'd be the one to torch my own marriage, to take 12 years of what I'd sworn was a good life and watch it go up in flames, leaving nothing but ash and a truth so twisted it made me question every damn day I'd spent calling Greg my husband. We'd been together since I was 25, met at a tailgate outside Carter Finley Stadium back in 2011, a crisp October afternoon where the air smelled like charcoal and cheap beer, the Wolfpack flags snapping in the breeze. I was a nurse then, fresh out of UNC's program, nursing a Natty Light in a red Solo cup, my scrubs swapped for a faded NCU hoodie and jeans that hugged my hips just right, my chestnut hair pulled into a ponytail that whipped around in the wind. Greg was 27, a high school football coach at Millbrook High, leaning against his beat-up F-150 in a flannel and a ball cap, his green eyes catching mine over a cooler of ice as he tossed me a can with a grin that said he'd already decided I was his. He'd fumbled the toss. Typical Greg, all heart and no finesse, and I'd laughed, picking it up off the gravel, cracking it open as he ambled over, saying, "Hope you're better at catching passes than I am at throwing them." That was him. Steady, easy, the kind of guy who'd spend his Saturday taping ankles for his players or fixing the porch swing just because I'd mentioned it creaked. We'd built a life from there, piece by piece. A rented duplex off Glenwood Avenue our first year, then a brick ranch in North Raleigh by 2014 after I found out I was pregnant with Mason, our son. A sturdy little house with a patchy lawn and a carport where his truck sat beside my Corolla. He was my anchor. Kisses on my forehead after a double shift at Rex Hospital. "You're my MVP," murmured over coffee at the kitchen table. Sunday barbecues in the backyard with our kids. Mason and Lily chasing fireflies while our lab mix, Daisy, barked at the smoker. Friends swore we had it made. My sister sent us homemade jam every summer. His mom framed our wedding photo for her mantle. Our neighbors nodded when Greg hauled the grill out, his whistle dangling from his neck like a badge of honor. We had 2 kids now. Mason 10, a wiry kid with Greg's eyes, and Lily 7, all curls and sass. And at 37 I still turned heads at the grocery store, my scrubs hiding a body kept tight from chasing shifts and wrangling chaos. But 12 years in, that spark we'd had, the one that kept us up late on his sagging couch trading stories or sneaking off to make out in his truck under the pines, had dimmed, softened into a routine of packed lunches, game nights, and his snores beside me. I never thought I'd stray, never pictured myself as the type to crack open what we'd built. Started as a game, a little flirtation to feel alive again. I didn't know it'd end with Greg handing me proof he'd been playing me all along, or that he'd been hiding a game of his own that made mine look like child's play. It crept up slow, a itch I didn't notice until it was clawing at me. Greg and I were solid, or so I'd convinced myself. But time had sanded down the edges of us, blurred the heat we'd had back when we'd spend hours tangled in that duplex, the windows open to let in the Raleigh night, or when he'd pull me into the equipment room after a game, his hands sweaty and rough, the scoreboard still glowing through the slats. Those early days were messy, alive. Me pulling 12-hour shifts in the air, him scribbling plays on napkins at Waffle House, stealing kisses over hash browns, our fingers brushing like we couldn't get enough. We'd moved in together after a year, a rash choice after my roommate bailed, him saying, "Just bring your stuff over a beer at Mitch's Tavern," and it stuck. We signed for that duplex, hauled my IKEA dresser up the stairs, laughed until we cried when the bed frame collapsed under us that first night. By year 3 we'd saved enough for the ranch, a hand-me-down from his uncle we'd claimed with paint rollers and elbow grease. Him in a tank top, me in cutoffs, both of us streaked with eggshell white, blasting Luke Bryan from a radio caked in sawdust. We'd married at year 4, a small thing at Dorothea Dix Park under a big oak, me in a lace dress from Belk, him in a gray suit that tugged at his shoulders, our friends toasting with sweet tea and Bud Lights as the sun dipped low. It was us, real, rough around the edges, a love I'd have staked my life on. But 12 years later that love had settled into a rhythm. Him up at 5:30 for practice, me at the hospital by 7, dinners of his meatloaf or my thrown-together stir-fry nights where he'd watch ESPN on the couch while I charted notes beside him, Daisy's tail thumping against the hardwood. I'd catch him sometimes, his flannel fraying at the cuffs, his cap pulled low, his stubble graying at the jaw, and feel this ache like I missed him even though he was right there, like we were partners in a business called family instead of lovers sharing a bed. I was 37 now, still lean from yoga at the Y and running the kids to soccer, my hair still glossy when I bothered with it. But the bathroom mirror showed wear, lines fanning from my eyes, a tiredness in my cheeks I couldn't scrub off. Work was steady but brutal, bandaging wounds, soothing fevers, the ER a blur of beeps and blood, And with Greg buried in playbooks and parent meetings, the fire we'd once had felt like a flicker I couldn't stoke. I didn't plan to cheat, I swore I wouldn't. But boredom and a need I couldn't name opened a door I didn't slam shut. It started innocent enough, a spark I didn't see catching until it was too late. Mike moved in next door 2 years back, a single dad with a 5-year-old girl, Sophie, and a pickup that roared into our cul-de-sac like it owned the place. He was 39, broad-shouldered, with a buzz cut and a laugh that carried over the fence, a mechanic who'd bought the split level across from us after his divorce. I'd met him first over a stuck lawnmower, Greg away at a game, me swearing at the damn thing in the driveway, Mason kicking a ball nearby when Mike strolled over, toolbox in hand, saying, "Need a hand, neighbor?" He'd fixed it in 10 minutes, grease on his knuckles, grinning as he wiped them on a rag, and I'd thanked him with a Coke from the fridge, the kids playing tag while we chatted about Raleigh summers and preschool tantrums. He was easy, uncomplicated, a guy who'd mow his lawn shirtless on Saturdays, who'd wave when I pulled in from a shift, who'd leave Sophie with us for an hour when he had a late job. Greg liked him, called him good people, invited him to barbecues, the three of us splitting beers on the deck while the kids ran wild, Daisy nosing for scraps. I didn't think much of it, just a friendly face, a break in the monotony, until last spring when the air got thick with pollen and something else I couldn't shake. It was a Tuesday, Greg at an away game in Cary, me in the backyard pulling weeds while Mason and Lily splashed in the kiddie pool, when Mike leaned over the fence, shirt off, sweat beading on his chest, saying, "You're working too hard out here. Need a beer?" I laughed, brushed dirt off my hands and said, "Twist my arm," following him to his patio while the kids shrieked behind us. We sat, cracked 2 buds, talked, work, his ex, the way Sophie's giggle sounded like Lily's, and when he said, "You're too pretty to be this tired," his eyes lingering a beat too long, I felt it. A jolt, a heat I hadn't known in years, a pull I didn't dodge. I should have stood up, gone home, kept it neighborly. But I stayed, let his compliments sink in, let the air hum between us. That was the first crack, the one I didn't seal. It didn't stop there. I let it grow, fed it like a stray that kept coming back. Mike and I started talking more. Casual at first, waves over the mailbox, chats when I'd drop Sophie off after a playdate, him asking about my shifts while the kids bickered over Legos. Then it shifted, texts, simple ones like, "You surviving that heat?" With a sun emoji, me firing back, "Barely, send help," grinning at my phone in the break room while Greg thought I was charting vitals. I'd catch him outside hauling trash bins or washing his truck, his forearms flexing under the spray, and feel my pulse kick, a buzz I hadn't had since Greg and I were new, back when every glance was a dare. I told myself it was harmless, he was just a friend, a distraction, a little light in the gray of my days. But it wasn't. One night in June, Greg away at a coach's clinic in Greensboro, me alone after the kids were in bed, Mike texted, "Porch beers?" "Sophie's out cold." I hesitated, Daisy whining at the door, the house too quiet, but typed, "Give me 10, slipping on flip-flops, my heart thudding as I crossed the lawn. He was there, 2 bottles sweating on the railing, the cicadas loud in the pines, and we sat close, the humidity sticking my tank top to my skin. "Rough shift?" he asked, voice low, and I nodded, "Always," sipping slow, his knee brushing mine on the bench. We talked, hospitals, his shop, the way Lily bossed Sophie around, until he said, "Greg's lucky, you know," his hand grazing my arm, warm and deliberate. My breath caught, a red flag I ignored, and I leaned in, kissed him, quick testing, pulling back to see if I'd misread. He didn't flinch, just smiled, pulled me back, and it was on, a messy, hungry thing that spilled over the fence line. I told myself it was a fluke, a one-off I could bury under laundry and soccer schedules, but it wasn't. It was a fuse and I'd lit it. The affair took root fast, a weed I couldn't, or wouldn't, pull. Greg's schedule gave it room. Away games every Friday, late practices, weekend clinics that left me solo with the kids, and a house that echoed without him. Mike filled the gaps, texts turning flirty, "Missed you today," with a winking face, me replying, "Your trouble," my stomach flipping as I hid the screen from Mason's prying eyes. It went from porch beers to stolen moments. His garage when Sophie was at her mom's, my kitchen when the kids napped, quick and desperate, his hands on me, my voice breaking against his neck, Daisy scratching at the back door. The hiding made it sharper. Every creak of the floor a jolt, every car down the street a panic, every touch a middle finger to the life I'd sworn to Greg. "This is crazy," I'd laugh, breathless, sprawled on his couch, and he'd grin, "Crazy's my specialty," tugging me under him again. I'd come home after, scrub my face, cook dinner, sit across from Greg when he rolled in, his whistle still around his neck, Daisy licking his boots, and feel the guilt gnaw his "love you babe" soft and blind as I nodded. You too, the lie slick on my tongue. I thought I was smart. Deleted texts, cash for gas, alibis about girls' nights or late shifts. And Greg bought it, or so I thought, his trust a shield I hid behind. Mike was my escape, my rush, a secret I cradled like a flame, until it burned me down. 9 months in, it blew apart. A night I didn't see coming until it was too late. Greg had an away game in Durham, 45 minutes out, said he'd be back by 11 with traffic. Plenty of time, I figured, to sneak Mike over after the kids were down. It was a Friday in March, the air cool with that first hint of spring, dogwoods budding pink along our street. I'd tucked Mason and Lily in by 8. Him with his switch, her with a stuffed bunny, locked Daisy in the yard, texted Mike, "Coast clear, 10 minutes?" He was there fast, front door creaking, his work boots soft on the rug, a 6-pack of Miller Lite in hand, his grin sharp in the lamplight. "Living dangerously," he said, popping a can, and I smirked, "Best way," pouring one for myself as we sank onto the couch, Daisy's barks fading outside. We didn't waste time. 2 sips in, his mouth was on mine, the beer cold on my lips, the room spinning as we stumbled to the bedroom, shedding shirts, the kids' snores a faint hum down the hall. It was reckless, his weight pinning me, my nails digging into his back, the headboard thumping soft against the wall, until headlights swept the window, tires crunching gravel way too early. "Shit," I hissed, shoving him off, yanking on a sweatshirt, my heart slamming as I barked, "Back door, go." He grabbed his boots, bolted, and I smoothed my hair, raced downstairs just as Greg stepped in. His duffel slung over his shoulder, his jacket zipped, 9:45 glowing on the microwave clock. "Hey," I croaked, forcing a smile, but his eyes, cold, steady, not the warm green the first knew, locked on mine, then flicked past, clocking the 2 cans on the coffee table, Mike's jacket still slung over the armrest, the faint thud of the back door swinging shut. He froze, jaw tight, and I braced for it, yelling fists the fight I'd earned, but he didn't move. He smirked, a slow, bitter twist, reached into his duffel and pulled out a stack of Polaroids, fanning them like cards. Me and Mike kissing over the fence, slipping into his garage, timestamps scrawled in Sharpie weeks back. "Thought you were smooth," he said, voice low, tossing them on the table with a note. "He's been watching you longer than I have." My stomach dropped, a free fall as he stared me down, calm as death. "Mike's been feeding me these for months. My idea, not his." The air sucked out, my knees buckling as I gripped the couch, Daisy scratching at the door, the kids' snores a distant echo. "What?" I choked, my voice a rasp, and Greg laughed, sharp, hollow, a sound I didn't know he could make, before dropping the real bomb. "You think I'm the only one who's been busy? Meet Tara," he said, pulling his phone, swiping to a photo. A woman, late 30s, blonde, smiling with him at a diner, another at a motel off I-40, dates stretching back a year, longer than me and Mike. "She's the principal at Millbrook. Started last spring when you were pulling doubles and I was at practice. Mike was my test. You failed, babe, but I've been failing longer." The words hit like a slap, my chest caving, his late nights, his scouting trips, his love you texts from the field, all lies, a shadow to my own. I'd been screwing Mike in our house, over our fence, while Greg was screwing Tara in hers, and our marriage, the one I'd bragged about, the one our kids lived in, was a sham, a setup where he'd baited me to justify his out. "You had him spy on me?" I whispered, throat raw, and he nodded, leaning against the wall, his whistle glinting under the light. "Needed proof you'd crack, hired him last fall, told him to flirt, see if you'd bite. He's been snapping pics since Halloween. Good ones, huh? Gave me leverage." He smirked again, colder, and grabbed his duffel. "I'm crashing at Tara's. Loyal call you." He walked out, past the grill where he'd flipped burgers, the couch where we'd watched The Office, the life we'd faked, leaving me with Daisy's wines, the Polaroids scattered like confetti, and a note that burned. He'd played me and I'd played right into it, both of us liars, both of us done.